Hi, welcome to the Year 10 Outdoor Ed roping equipment briefing. In this briefing, we're going to be talking about the 6 H's, which you're going to be required to check and have a good understanding for all of your roping lessons. The first H that we deal with is a generic H, which refers to all hanging things. So some hanging things that we might be dealing with on a day-to-day basis in school might be things like hair, potentially earrings, although you shouldn't be wearing them, things like necklaces and draw cords on some of your clothing and equipment. That also refers to any hanging parts of your harness, anything that can get caught in any of our devices or our ropes. The first hanging thing that we need to address before we address all other six of the H's is our hair. The way we address our hair is by making sure we have Sally slick back, making sure we address any fringes or any parts of our hair that can be caught in a device. The second H is our helmet. Now with the helmets that we use, it's really important to establish the front of the helmet. The way we do that is by looking at the inner harness system. Similar to a bike harness system, we actually have an adjustable component at the back. Now when we fit our helmet, it's important that firstly we fit it to the width or the crown of our head before we then adjust our chin strap. Placing the helmet on our head, we need to make sure that it's fitting nice and tightly secured around our forehead, and the way we do that is by adjusting the strap at the back. A quick check to make sure that it is fitted to our crown. I should be able to lean forward, give it a little bit of a shake, and if it doesn't come off, we know that that's fitted securely. The next component we can work on is our chin strap, and that is there to make sure that the helmet can't come off our face or our head. The way we check for our chin strap and the fitting of the chin strap is generally 2 fingers for comfort, but the most important thing is that it can't come through your chin. Going back to our next H before of hanging things, quite commonly you will have a hanging strap, and we can address that by tucking it away. Our third H is the harness. This is a really important element, and we use full body harness systems here at St. Mark's because that way it actually stops you from being able to fall out or come out of your harness when you're performing the adventure activities. The way we treat our harness is similar to a set of overalls, where we're actually going to step in. You'll have 3 different types of bands. You'll have your leg bands, your waist bands, and your shoulder bands. Now, each of your leg bands are actually color-coded with a red for right and a black for left. The easiest way to put our harness system on is to hold it by the grey shoulder straps, and as I said before, step in like a set of overalls. Making sure that both our left and right foot have a hole and a harness, as well as our waist strap. Now, a really easy way to get this process going is to loosen all of your straps before you put on your harness, and a good practice for other groups is to make sure at the end of every session you loosen the straps to make it easy to get in. Now, the first part that we need to tighten up, and this is the most important aspect, is we need to address our waist straps first. Now, for our waist strap, we work on the process of Harry high pants. We want to get the strap right up above our hips, so that way we use our hips as a bit of a stopper, making sure we can't fall out of the harness system. Now, when we use our harness and when we tighten our straps, it's important that we tighten them equally, so small tensions either side, making sure that we have them equal. Now, what that'll do for us, that'll make sure that our Edelred side sits in the middle of our back. If we start to tension them unevenly, we'll end up making our harness be a little bit skew, which will be a little bit uncomfortable when we go to then fit them. Now, in terms of tension, I've already spoken about them wanting to be above my hips and not being able to be pulled down. And a good guide for that is if I can just fit my thumbs inside my waist harness. The next step is to do our shoulder straps. Now with our shoulder straps, we don't want to feel so tight and uncomfortable that we feel like we're getting folded, but at the same time, we want them to be tight enough that they're not going to feel as though they're going to come over our shoulders. Our final straps, what we're going to work on, is going to be our leg straps. Now, unlike our waist straps, our leg straps can afford to be a little bit looser. The reason for that is we still want to keep our agility and our ability to move our limbs. So with our leg straps, we want to have it so we can get about a fist in at the front of our legs here. Any tighter than that, we'll find some restrictions. Now, going back to our first H of the day, we talked about hanging things. On all of the harnesses, you will have elastic components which will allow you to tuck away all of your hanging things and keep them out of the way. Now, if you're a smaller individual, you'll find that you'll have quite a significant amount of strap left over. If that's the case, it is okay to fold and put away your hanging things, but what we need to be really careful of and conscious of is keeping them away from the buckles. If we fold and have them near the buckles, we do run the risk of that buckle being tensioned and loosened as we're actually going through the process of our activity. So it's really important just to tuck away each and every one of our hanging things on each aspect of our harness. Our fourth H is hands. Now, it's really important that when we are talking about the H of hands, we understand when it's appropriate to be using gloves to protect ourselves and when it's important to have our bare hands to get maximal purchase on the rope. Now, times where you will need to be using gloves and protect your hands is times where you are using moving rope. Now, some of these actions could be when we are belaying, which is the most common time, or when we're in a backup belaying process. Now, what's really important is when we are looking for our gloves, making sure that there are no holes, and even more so important, making sure we have one for our left and our right hand. When we're climbing and we're actually not dealing with moving rope, it's really important that we have the best purchase and the best grip possible, so your bare hands will be fine in that case. Our fifth H is hardware. Now, hardware is a very broad term used for all of our devices which are actually used to connect or act as some sort of ascending or descending devices. Now, what's a really important factor when we're dealing with our hardware is to know that these items do not get retired. Now, what that means is that they are incredibly robust, but at the same time, we need to have 100% faith that they've been used and maintained. Now, one way we can do that is showing extreme vigilance when we're actually using this type of gear. One way that we can look after and make sure that we are using these safely is whenever they're not being used, they can actually be secured and attached to our gear loop on our harness. The second way that we can make sure that we're looking after this gear is to make sure that if it is dropped or if it is damaged, it is reported to the staff member as soon as possible. A really important factor that you need to take into consideration is that you will not be told off if you drop or if you damage any of this equipment. Okay, so it is really important that you know that it is okay to tell a member of staff that this equipment may have been compromised. If you do feel as though part of this equipment has been compromised, we're likely to ask you 3 questions. The first one is, how high was it dropped from? Or what was the issue? The second question might be, what was the surface that it landed on? And finally, what sort of noise did it make that made you feel as though it might be compromised? When dealing with hardware, one of the common bits of material and equipment that you'll use on a day-to-day basis is something that we call a carabiner. Now, often these might also be referred to as crabs or beaners. Now, when it comes to carabiners, there are 2 different types. There's an alloy carabiner and there's also a steel carabiner. Now, dealing with an alloy carabiner, we have certain reasons and certain times where these are most beneficial. In terms of advantages of using an alloy carabiner, they are significantly lighter. So it's a little bit less arduous on the climber or on the instructor who has to carry perhaps a large quantity of these types of devices. When we might possibly use these is any time that we are attaching pieces of hardware to ourselves in a perhaps belaying capacity. When dealing with a steel carabiner, these are our workhorses. The notable disadvantages are they are incredibly heavy, and you can feel the difference when holding a steel carabiner and an alloy carabiner. The advantage of these is that they are far more robust and are less prone to denting or any sorts of damage when they might be dealing with constant knocks, perhaps being used against a climbing wall or an exposed rock face. When we're going to use a steel carabiner is when we're actually rigging or perhaps when we're actually connecting ourselves to a belaying device. When working with carabiners, it's important that we understand the characteristics of carabiners and how they're designed to be functioned and used. On every carabiner, you will have a large side, which we refer to as the fat belly. The other side, directly opposite the fat belly, we have the smaller side, which we refer to as the skinny or the small belly. We also have the spine, which, like our body, provides the rigidity and the strength of the system. On the opposite side of the carabiner, we have what's called the gate. Now, the gate, like every other gate, is our ability to open and also close and allows us to enter the system. Now, the important aspect that we need to know from this is the weakest part of this carabiner is located right here on the pin of the gate. Why it's important to know all these different factors is that carabiners are designed to be loaded along the spine. If at any time you see a carabiner which is side-loaded, meaning across the spine and across the gate like so, we need to either inform an instructor or remedy the actual issue to make sure it is appropriately loaded. When we're looking at carabiner gates, we have two different types of options. The one that I have here is a steel carabiner, but it has a slightly different type of gate. It's what we call a tri-lock system. The way a tri-lock system works is to open the gate, we need to push up, turn to the left, and then open the gate system. Now, the advantage to this system is as soon as I let it go, it should technically self-lock. The other type of gate system that we'll deal with is something we call a screw gate. Now, the way this works, the same principle as any screw or thread, turning to the right, righty-tighty, turning to the left, lefty-loosey. The way the gate system works is if the gate is unscrewed, the gate will be open. As I turn to the right, finger tight, the gate will then close. Now, with all carabiner systems and all hardware, it's vitally important that we check to make sure that the screw gate or the gate itself, whether it be tri-lock or screw gate system, is closed. The way we do that is by offering a click-click test. Now, a closed click-click test will sound like so. An open click-click test will have obviously a different sound and the visual of the gate opening. Our final H is our heels or our hooves. Now, when we're dealing with our heels or hooves or our footwear, we want to make sure there's two different aspects we're addressing. They need to be securely fastened, so if possible double knots, but making sure that they're tied and obviously our shoelaces aren't having any hanging things. The last point is they need to be appropriate footwear for the activity. So enclosed footwear is definitely a must, and shoelaces and the ability to fasten the footwear to our feet is really important.